Portland mayor said he will disband 3 Portland Police Bureau units and redirect $12 million to community programs. From the Portland Tribune. Mayor Ted Wheeler announced a series of police reforms Tuesday that he is enacting ahead of any other city council actions. Among other things, Wheeler said he was disbanding the Portland Police Bureau's Gun Violence Reduction Team, School Resource Officer Program, and the officers assigned to TriMet's Transit Police Division. Wheeler said he's been listening to feedback from leaders and the community over the past few weeks, and he's heard the demands. Quote, "I want you to know that I take each of these demands seriously," he said. "I would have acted with greater urgency on these demands," he said. Let's take a look at these 3 programs. He's getting rid of the Gun Violence Reduction Team. This program is just over a year old, and according to the city website, the Portland Police Bureau is making some internal structural changes that will allow for a more collaborative approach for responding to and preventing gun violence in the city of Portland. That seems kind of important. Gun violence reduction, isn't that what everyone wants? The second program, School Resource Officer Program, the primary activities of the SRO are problem solving, education, mentorship, and crime prevention. These partnerships to prevent the unnecessary criminalization of youth behaviors when possible. Well, that sounds like a really good idea. And the third program to get axed, officers assigned to TriMet's Transit Division. TriMet is a public transportation here in Portland. There are buses and light rail. The way it works for light rail, for example, is you buy a ticket either from the machine or on an app on your phone. Occasionally, there will be a fare inspector to ask to see your ticket. If you don't have it, they will give you a ticket. This is always backed up by having a police officer. If you take away the threat of a cop, it's just somebody with no authority asking for proof of fare. The natural result of having no police to enforce this is way less people will buy a ticket. What are they going to do? There was a double homicide recently on the light rail. You think things will be safer if the criminals know that there won't be any cops on the trains? Collected revenues will go down and the city will have to make up the difference by raising property taxes. I can't think of anything dumber than this. We have a huge problem with homeless in Portland, hashtag not all homeless. But if the troublemakers know that there will be no transit cops on the light rail, I guarantee that they will take up on the rail cars. I mean, why sit on the sidewalk when you can have a nice seat in the train, especially when it's raining? Unlike many other cities, we don't have turnstiles or anything preventing people from entering a train. It's mainly on the honor system, and occasionally there will be inspectors to verify you bought a ticket. With no cops, the light rail will be less safe and will lose revenue. But our mayor, Ted Wheeler, doesn't care. He doesn't have to ride public transportation. He lives in a $1.5 million house in the West Hills. He's got a beachfront home on the coast and even a $1 million property in the San Juan Islands. That's what this defund the cops movement is about. It's a money grab. It is transferring money from one department that you don't have any political influence over to private organizations that you're aligned with politically. That's what this is. If you just take a look at homeless organizations, for example, because that's where some of the money is going to be going. Here in Portland, we have a huge, huge homeless problem. Thousands of homeless, and it's gotten worse every single year. I've been here like 18 years. Every single year it's become worse. And they keep putting more and more money into all these programs. And they don't appear to be doing anything. I'm sure there are good people that work at some of these organizations, but it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And throwing more money at it is not going to solve anything. You take away these 3 programs, like especially having no transit cops, on the light rail, that's just going to wreck it. It's just going to make it even worse. But, there will be some people that are friends with the mayor that are going to get rich off of this. So that's essentially what this program is about, but I'm open to have my mind changed on this one. But I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Adidas says at least 30% of new U.S. positions will be filled by Black or Latinx people. CNN Business reports a new hiring initiative at Adidas is aiming to increase the representation of people of color in the North American workforce. The company plans to fill a minimum of 30% of new positions with Black or Latinx people, Adidas announced Tuesday, along with several other actions it is taking in response to protests over the death of George Floyd and calls for racial justice. Now, I'm aware that some people say Latinx. If you want me to say that, put a dash in the word. In English, we have rules for pronunciation. I know many people from Latin America. Not one of them uses that term. So, what exactly did Adidas agree to do? 30% new hire Black or Latino? According to the U.S. Census, Blacks make up 13.4% of the population, while Hispanic or Latino make up 18.3%. So Adidas agreed to hire 30% for a group that makes up 31.7% of the population. Congrats. You're really making strides. Of course, they're based here in Portland, where Blacks make up less than 3% of the population and Hispanics are about 8%. This is such a hollow pronunciation. We're going to do this great thing. We're going to hire so many people, but not even enough that it's going to be representative for what's in the population. Adidas, you should already be hiring that many Black and Latino people. So agreeing to do it now, it's about time. And they didn't say that they would agree that 30% of their board would be Black or Latino. They didn't agree that 30% of their management would be Black or Latino. No, they just said 30% of their new hires. So we know how this is going to work, probably. They're going to hire more Black kids to work in the company store, right? And that'll get the numbers up. But it's not going to take place at management. It's not going to take place in the upper levels of the corporate headquarters, but they are going to make it visible that they've hired more people of color. This is sad, and it doesn't really prove anything to anyone. We've seen this before, and I think it's just a hollow promise that Adidas is making. And again, I think concentrating on the race of a person, I think that representation is important. And you should have people of all backgrounds in your company. There have been lots of studies to show that you will be more successful if you do that. But doing a head count of people to make sure that everyone is properly covered in a big company, that should happen already. You shouldn't be doing that now. It's 2020. Get with it. 14 states and Puerto Rico hit highest 7-day average of new coronavirus infections. From the Washington Post. Since the start of June, 14 states and Puerto Rico have recorded their highest ever 7-day average of new coronavirus cases since the pandemic began. According to the data tracked by the Washington Post, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Florida, Kentucky, New Mexico, North Carolina, Mississippi, Oregon, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Utah. If the pandemic's first wave burned through dense metro hubs such as New York City, Chicago, and Detroit, the highest percentages of new cases are coming from places with much smaller populations. Lincoln County, Oregon, an area of less than 50,000, has an average of 20 new daily cases. That also happens to be where I go surfing. Protesters flooded the streets of major cities, but gathered in small towns across the country too. Though the widespread protests are a boon to the movement, health officials have warned about the impact so many people closely packed with one another could have on transmission rates. Now, here in Portland, we've had protests every day since they started. Tens of thousands of people have been gathering. Obviously, there's going to be more and more new cases, and you've seen that in the results. It's just gone through the roof of new cases here in Oregon. Yesterday, I think it was the highest day that they've recorded, and that was 50% higher than the day before, which was the highest day they recorded up until that point. That's not a good sign. Second wave confirmed. Cops canceled at Paramount Network. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. Paramount Network has pulled the plug on Cops for good. The Viacom CBS-owned cabler has removed the long-running show from its schedule in the wake of nationwide protests following the police-involved death of George Floyd on May 25th. Now, the network says it's dropping the show altogether. Cops is not on the Paramount Network, and we don't have any current or future plans for it to return, a network spokesperson said. I'm in shock. One, that Cops is still on the air. I haven't seen it in at least a decade. I didn't know that it was still around. But to cancel it over what's going on, I don't know. Maybe they were going to cancel it anyway. Who knows? But that is an interesting reaction, that something that I think was, on its 30th season, to just throw out a successful program like that is an interesting choice, I guess. It makes me think back to, it was in the early 90s. I did security for an Inner Circle show, and that was the group that did the theme song, Bad Boys. And I remember hanging out with the group. I think they were from Jamaica, and they insisted on having red stripe lagers backstage, which was interesting because that's the Jamaican lager. Not a great beer, but that was funny. But it gets me thinking back, Cops has been around that long. That's unbelievable. But no more. We won't have that show anymore. We've got 500 channels, but I guess there's no room for that type of programming anymore. Grads receive diplomas aboard jet skis after high school refuses to cancel commencement ceremony. From Good News Network. Despite how the novel coronavirus shutdowns have canceled thousands of commencement ceremonies around the world, this Florida school found a creative way of celebrating their senior students while still respecting social distancing. Back in May, the Somerset Island Prep Charter High School in Key West handed out diplomas to all of their graduating students, but rather than having teens walk across the stage, the ceremony was held on the open sea. In addition to donning caps and gowns, the grads were asked to wear life jackets and face masks so they could receive their diplomas aboard a jet ski. I think that's a fun, memorable way to graduate high school. It's creative, and they're going to remember that forever. I have no recollection of my own high school graduation at all. I do remember tossing it into the back seat of my Volkswagen Beetle, and I never saw it again. Who knows what happened to my diploma? I don't know, but I think that that's a fun story. And yeah, that's the news for today, or at least the news I'm talking about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have an awesome day. Peace.